So I am not aware of the exact difference that there is potentially between a white hat and a Nazi. So I actually, and I apologize for having promoted the idea that there are white hats. And in fact, I told them to prescribe that notion by naming white hats, where someone would perceive where a jaded individual, which I've been guilty of being jaded, so I kind of understand the mentality where, people no one trusts someone in the government to aid with help or rescue people, a man or individual that is in need. Well, I have been in a great amount of need, and I've understood the situation in the country where we are all feeling sort of, in a sense, needed to be rescued or freed. So whether white, and I apologize for promoting again that idea that they actually exist by that measure, and but what has changed in terms of that idea that we are now under white control versus Nazism? It seems to be that, and they're not changing too much. I don't know if most people notice. Well, where they bomb land, and I know it's a game here that I guess they're looking out for their own asses. Because when they don't have a means of revenue, because their job is extinguished, because there's not one to fund it, because they stopped doing the task that paid the money. And I'm talking about where they bomb land, for instance. And it's not funny. And so, eventually, and here's the overall bigger standard to address the issue. There's two angles to focus on this prominent issue where it affects the weather. Yes, we're getting bombed. Nothing has changed as far as that, other than, I think people are realizing it's wrong, how wrong it is. I didn't have time or means to protest bombing land, and I wasn't fully aware of how it affects the weather. Directly. I knew it had to do with emissions, but I didn't know specifically and particularly the amount that the bombing does directly affect the weather. Well, so for me, what's frustrating about it is the fact that, well, it's hard to understand that anyone is complicit with government and government-funded agency. Half the agencies are government-funded. They're not government. Or anyone is complicit with that, any individual. And growing up in winter weather, my whole childhood, I know it is a drag, and it causes complications that are not worth the time and effort. You know, where your car freezes, your expensive gas bills, and so on and so forth. You have to do twice as extra just to prepare for it, and it freezes the land. And I'm not even talking about the health stuff with hazards of bombing land with whatever chemical they're spraying. God knows what it is. I mean, if they're spraying, mustard gas, no, that's not it, because nobody felt that on their skin. I don't know how mustard gas works. I don't know how where outright deadly toxins, where anyone that owns a plane can potentially, do that, bomb your land. But we haven't heard of that well, I hope just because I say it doesn't make it so, which is weird how the Nazi, I don't know what it is, seems to seize upon the words I say in order to forecast what's happening. But common sense, most people know, or whatever you are, knows that's wrong. If it doesn't naturally appear in the world, in nature, then it shouldn't, and then it doesn't need extra. That gas and chemical is not saving life. It is causing the weather to temperatures to be low and inhospitable, causing inhospitable weather and dangerous conditions, particularly when driving. When I was a kid growing up, the winter weather did not last this long into the season, particularly right through March. Never did it snow until March, and as we are now, it snows until summertime. Anyone with sense knows that is not normal. And I remember, actually, the year before last, not last winter season, but not this last winter season, but this winter season before this last one, where it was 80 degrees outside. And it was so bizarre an experience. You could just cut the people astonishment. You could cut the astonishment where you walk down the street with a knife. Like, people were just bombasted with, like, nobody said anything with the fact that we're experiencing summer weather in midwinter, where normally it's blizzards and 30 degrees below, freezing in, that part. I believe it was in the midst of they were reporting wildfire season in other countries. But the overall standard to look at in terms of funded agency taking the grips of power from the sheer basic power of each man and individual from them, and that is an example of it, a big example of, they're just gonna piss all over the land to keep the land unhospitable. How long are they gonna do that? As long as they can keep getting paid, or until someone figures out legal procedure and petitions against it, obviously through the courts. But the greater standpoint here is men declare freedom, and not to oversell the obvious. We live in a failed system. It's going down. I'm not going down with it. The failed United States Incorporated, where we must begin a newly erected republic, and it is Republic of the United States. And I pray that most men acknowledge the free status, and it is by declaring your fundamental focal point to find your status paperwork is at the website. Why the website? Well, the website has done the privilege of locating and documenting the paperwork in this country, in the United States, that is necessary to present the state in order to declare one's freedom as a free man. Because when you feed that corporation that it gives it power, and this monetary system that you've been under, that is part of its power. Part of taking the power back is to not feed the Nazi, not feed the corporation. You starve it. It is an inanimate object. This is the function of the government as dead entities go. This is its language. It does not feel. When I use personified language to describe, so to starve a person or a dead entity or corporation, that is a falsehood. You obviously don't starve an inanimate object or a fiction, but for lack of a better description, and versus you deny it privilege of freedom to access your property, where you cause the extent of damage. It damages your person and your bloodline and your family. The more it wins out over each of us, and as a community. So each community member, the more people that and seek freedom, the less power it has over each community. I encourage people to share this information wherever they can. I imagine certain individuals, maybe some that are very rich or very poor, may not be interested in freeing their status, maybe because they still see hope in that old system. But right now I'm reaching out to the status quo, and mind you understand this is a new recent discovery, declaring one a free man, but never give up. That is the name of this game, particularly when you're fighting for your rights and the rights of your property. In this sense, we are technically and literally using the system that has been used against us to seek freedom from it. It is metaphorically fighting fire with fire. Their monetary system has been used against us. They get paid every time you get arrested. They get paid every time you become cyber-type services involved. But not everything is completely black and white. With everything, and these things that have had power and control over each man. Not saying it can be reasoned with, because again that is a personification, but there is reason where one must claim ownership of their status, individual, and property, and that is using their system to free oneself, as I just explained. And I apologize to any white hat that may be in power where I call it a Nazi. I am not. I would appreciate it. Whatever is listening, where there is a difference between its legal person, which is what I don't know right now, so I refer to it as a Nazi, or versus a white hat. I don't know what agency is responsible. I'm going to keep exclaiming that. Yeah, I don't know. It is an agency that is funded by the Department of Transportation. Okay. I haven't sought disclosure yet because I'm busy. But so I know there's not just a retaliatory sense, but again, every time I complain, it increases like I don't know, it increases its weather controlling mechanism of bombing the land like it's running out of time, and it is true. And again, this is why it is important for people to free their status. Please understand that legal procedure. There's legal procedure behind everything incorporated into controlling vestibule of freedom. Okay? The land belongs to man. The Lord gave the land to man. It did not give the land to an inanimate object of fiction to hold dictatorship over a man. Therefore, everything upon the land belongs to each man, and one must desire to know. It is through their own system that they set up against us to proclaim ownership, and this is the beginning of it, doing that. Understanding this legal procedure, actually physically putting in the paperwork. Now, further research, always further research how to explicitly demand land. These are lands that are unaccounted for, besides your own property. Whoever I'm talking to that outright owns their property, or is in the midst of owning their property. So, and these lessons come, but we're patient right now. It's just the beginning, but I promote people to share this. And interesting how history revolves to repeat. Where I quote the Holy Bible, this exact type of thing has occurred. Bondage to the native people of the land, to the people of the ancient nation of Israel, which is just considered people of Israel within the biblical texts and times. And for many of us, it's hard to imagine that it was ever different from how we are now to be born free. But that did occur where men were free outright. They did not have to give privilege to any man before them or above them, where we do now have to. We are bonded. And we can read about the chronicles of this history where it happened to the still standing nation that is still in existence of Israel in the biblical times, where the people were bonded. They were bonded over a series of generations throughout history, beginning with the book of Exodus. It explains how they were freed outright, and within that book it also explained some, or not some, but basically where the Lord performed miracles to people in order to grant their freedom through granting their survival, so to speak. And the Lord showed the leaders of the people, or the leader of the people at the time, how to give the Lord praise for the astonishing miracles that they witnessed. But after time, the nation became under bondage again, and eventually, after generations, it was discovered the book of the law of God that had been, it had been stolen, and the people were not able to claim the interest of it after a period of time, and after so many generations of kings that have the bondage of the nation fell within. It explains how in the book of Ezra, the final chapter of their bondage, the final chapters of their bondage was under the King Cyrus of Babylon, who basically, after the people were recaptured, because they were, wars ensued, and where they were just struggling for their freedom, finally captured by Babylon under King Nebuchadnezzar, who retired and King Cyrus was instated, who wrote the law allowing the nation of Israel freedom to worship their Lord, where the people finally relocated the book of the law of God and secretly held worship rituals and, to praise the Lord, which were the rituals that the Lord showed them when He freed them from bondage from Egypt. And and King Cyrus played that role in rewriting their laws to allow that, and the people used Babylon's gold and were bestowed property by King Cyrus to worship their Lord, and this is how they freed themselves from bondage. And then to say finally, despite many of us cannot imagine what it is to be born free, even if it takes a whole nother generation or two for this outcome on earth, then it's worth it. And not to give up hope. Thanks for listening.